My milkshake brings all the Boy! I didn't see you come in. You know, you could maybe knock before coming in. Had you waited any longer, you would have seen my best dance moves. So, I guess you are here for more. So where are we now? Yes, we left off at envy. So, if envy is what makes you look at someone else's life and start questioning your own, then lust is what happens when desire stops listening to wisdom. Quick disclaimer, this is just my thoughts, my perspective, connecting dots, asking questions, for entertainment purposes only. Yeah, you get it. But seriously, lust is probably one of the most misunderstood patterns we talk about, because most people reduce it down to sex. But lust is deeper than that. Lust is distorted desire. It's desire that moves too fast, desire that refuses boundaries, desire that wants fulfillment now without fully thinking about the cost later. And that's why it's dangerous. Because desire itself isn't evil. Attraction isn't evil. Wanting connection isn't evil. Wanting intimacy, affection, closeness, that's human. That's part of design. But lust begins the moment desire stops respecting alignment. Lust feels like connection, but a lot of the time, it's really just desire, moving too fast to think. And the reason this pattern is so powerful is because it doesn't feel destructive in the beginning. It feels exciting, comforting, validating, like something inside of you is finally being satisfied. And in today's world, almost everything around us feeds it. The music, the algorithms, the ads, the scrolling, the constant need for attention, validation, stimulation. You can literally feel people being trained to crave each other, to consume each other, to constantly chase the next emotional high, the next fantasy, the next interaction that makes them feel wanted. And after a while, you stop realizing how much it's shaping the way you think. Because lust doesn't just affect behavior, it affects perception. You stop seeing people clearly. You start seeing them through appetite, through fantasy, through what they can give you emotionally, physically, psychologically. And once that happens, people slowly stop becoming people and start becoming experiences. That's why lust can become so consuming. Because it doesn't stay in one area, it spreads. It affects relationships, attention span, self-control, commitment, even identity. And the dangerous part is, you can still look functional on the outside while it's happening. Still smiling, still successful, still moving through life normally, while privately, your desires are pulling you in directions your wisdom wouldn't choose. And this is where people usually mess up the conversation. Because they think lust is only about extreme situations, scandals, cheating, public downfall. But those things are usually the end result, not the beginning. The beginning is subtle. It's entertaining attention you know you shouldn't entertain. It's feeding thoughts you know are pulling you somewhere unhealthy. It's convincing yourself it's not that serious. And if we're being honest, most people know exactly what that feels like. That internal tension. That moment where part of you knows something is off, but another part of you doesn't want to let it go. Because lust doesn't usually whisper, destroy your life. It whispers, just this once, just one conversation, just one message, just one moment. And the longer you feed it, the quieter your wisdom becomes. And this is why we keep seeing the same public conversations happen over and over again. Relationships collapsing, people risking careers, reputations, families, over temporary desire. We even see modern public conversations surrounding figures like Shannon Sharpe become bigger than the individuals themselves because people recognize the larger pattern underneath. Desire, impulse, temptation, consequences. Because at the end of the day, lust isn't just about wanting something. It's about what happens when desire becomes stronger than discernment. And when that pattern keeps going unchecked, it leads somewhere very specific. Let's walk through it. So, this story doesn't begin with destruction. That's important to understand, because when people think about downfall, they usually focus on the final moment, the exposure, the consequence, the collapse. But most destructive patterns don't begin there. They begin quietly, subtly, with moments that seem small enough to control. And that's exactly what we see with David. Now remember, David wasn't powerless. He wasn't lacking success. He wasn't lacking purpose. He wasn't some broken man with nothing going for him. He wasn't a Pookie or Ray-Ray. If anything, he was what some would call a high-value man. He already had position, authority, influence. And that matters. Because lust doesn't always come from emptiness. Sometimes it comes from appetite, becoming undisciplined. The story says David looks out and sees Bathsheba bathing. And right there, that's the moment. Not the affair, not the cover-up, the moment. Because temptation itself isn't the same as action. You can notice something, feel something, experience attraction without feeding it. But the danger begins when you stop checking the desire and start entertaining it. And that's what happens here. David doesn't redirect, doesn't walk away, doesn't create distance between himself and what he knows is pulling at him. Instead, he leans toward it. And once desire starts being fed, it starts growing. Now curiosity becomes pursuit. Pursuit becomes action. And action brings consequence. David sends for her, and eventually, Bathsheba becomes pregnant. Now the situation changes, because now, what was hidden internally has entered reality. And this is where lust often shifts into something else. Panic, damage control, the desperate need to manage consequences without confronting the root issue. So David starts trying to control the situation. He calls Uriah home from war, and the plan is simple. If Uriah goes home to his wife, then maybe everything can be covered up. Maybe reality can be rewritten. Maybe the consequences can disappear. But this is where the story becomes heavy. Because Uriah doesn't go home. Out of loyalty, discipline, and honor, he refuses comfort while other men are still fighting. And the contrast between these two men in this moment is powerful. David, a king, is being ruled by appetite, while Uriah, a soldier, is still ruled by principle. And that contrast matters, because lust doesn't just distort desire, it distorts judgment. You start prioritizing what feels good in the moment over what's right long term. And once that happens, things escalate quickly. Because when the cover-up fails, David pushes further. He sends Uriah back into battle, carrying orders for his own death. Put him on the front lines, pull back support, leave him exposed. And that, right there, shows how dangerous unchecked desire can become. Because this story didn't start with murder. It started with a moment he refused to let go. And once lust took control, it didn't stay isolated. It spread. From desire to deception to manipulation to destruction. And if we're being honest, that's how these patterns usually work. Not instantly, progressively. One compromise leading to another. One rationalization making the next one easier. One moment where you say, it's not that serious. Until eventually, you barely recognize how far you've drifted from where you started. And that's the dangerous thing about lust. It rarely presents itself as destruction. It presents itself as pleasure, connection, relief, escape. But underneath all of that, it keeps pulling. And if it isn't checked, it will keep taking. And eventually, the consequences always arrive. And this is where the pattern finally catches up. Because lust doesn't usually feel destructive while it's happening. That's important. It feels exciting, comforting, validating. It feels like relief, like escape, like finally satisfying something that's been pulling at you internally. And that's why so many people underestimate it. Because the beginning rarely looks dangerous. But eventually, reality arrives. And when it does, the aftermath starts becoming visible. Trust starts breaking. Relationships start shifting. Peace starts disappearing. And sometimes, the damage isn't even immediate. Sometimes it's gradual, a slow drifting, where people stop feeling emotionally connected, stop feeling safe, stop feeling secure. Because lust doesn't just affect actions. It affects presence, attention, commitment. And one of the most dangerous parts about it is how it slowly trains people to chase intensity over depth. The next feeling, the next fantasy, the next emotional high. Always chasing stimulation instead of learning how to sustain connection. And once someone gets trapped in that cycle, stillness starts feeling empty. Consistency starts feeling boring. Real commitment starts feeling less exciting than temporary emotion. And that's why lust can quietly destroy things that actually matter. Not because the person necessarily wanted destruction, but because appetite kept overriding discernment. And if we're being honest, most people have experienced this at some level. That internal pull, that tension between what feels good right now and what you already know might cost you later. Because lust rarely whispers, "Destroy your peace." It whispers, "You deserve this. No one will know. It's not that serious. Just one moment." And the longer that voice gets fed, the quieter wisdom becomes. That's why the story of David hits so hard. Because what started as a moment of desire eventually spread into deception, manipulation, and death. Not because that was the original intention, but because unchecked desire keeps escalating to protect itself. And that pattern still exists now. People risking families, friendships, careers, self-respect, over moments that only lasted minutes. And afterward, many of them say the same thing. It wasn't worth it. But that realization usually comes after the consequence arrives, after trust is broken, after damage is done, after the moment passes and reality settles back in. Because lust is powerful in the moment, but temporary moments can create permanent consequences. And this is where the conversation usually gets misunderstood. Because the answer isn't pretending desire doesn't exist. The answer isn't becoming emotionless. The answer is alignment, discipline, learning how to slow desire down long enough for wisdom to speak. Because desire itself isn't evil, it's human. But desire without boundaries, without discernment, without self-control, eventually starts controlling the person instead of serving them. And once that happens, people stop making decisions based on clarity and start making them based on craving. That's the trap. Because lust convinces people they're pursuing fulfillment, while often pulling them further away from it. And once you really understand that, you start becoming more aware of what you feed, what you entertain, what you allow to keep growing unchecked internally. Because not every desire deserves your attention, and not every feeling deserves action. Sometimes wisdom sounds less exciting in the moment, but protects you from becoming someone you no longer recognize later. Because at the end of the day, lust isn't just about desire. It's about what happens when desire becomes stronger than discernment. With that being said, lust often leaves behind more than temptation. It leaves pain, regret, humiliation, broken trust. And when those things sit unresolved for long enough, another pattern begins to emerge: wrath. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, comment, share with your loved ones, your family now. And please, join us for our next video as we get into wrath. We love you, take care, and I'll see you there. Oh, before you go, I put together a little song that speaks on the obsession side of lust called Until I Own You. I'll throw a little sample here. There's also one called The Gluttony of Lust, which is expressive on the physical side of lust. Link in the description.
You chose me. You can